Got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rory, for the introduction, and Mary also for co-organizing it. It's actually a pleasure for me to be here facilitating this first part of the last seminar that is focused on digital platforms. And well, we know, with the pandemic that we are just going through and getting over from, I mean, it's almost like platforms are being normalized, right? We're getting more and more used to these platforms everywhere. So it's almost like the time has come also for cooperatives to have their say and to show different ways of carrying on these platform cooperativism. So that's why, I have done some work on this topic, and it's one that I have very, very close to my heart. And because EMES also has been very involved through speakers, and then Rory himself and Mary, well, it was really a wonderful way of closing the seminar. And I'm also thrilled, as Rory was saying, that we were able to have Anna and Ali. I think that they come from different backgrounds, and that it come from different countries. And they also are working or tackling on this idea of platform cooperativism from different angles. So I really hope that the dialogue is going to be very, very complementary, and that we'll be able to have a very, very neat discussion. Anna, it's actually the co-founder and worker owner of Tacebaes Cooperative Society, which is a human-based innovation cooperative, and they do very, very neat things. I have had a chance to look into it. They were incubated, if I'm not wrong, in the Mondragon Team Academy. She's also the VP for Europe in the International Cooperative Alliance Youth Network. So it's also very good for us to, and I think that any time that we have a conversation like this, it's also good to make a special effort to include voices of female activists and practitioners, but also who are very well connected to international networks. So this is definitely the case. And she's also the operations lead in the Platform Cooperatives Now, which is the Now course by Mondragon at the New School. And she's also part of the Data Cooperative Research Sprint, which takes place at Harvard. That's on the side of Anna. Then what I will do is that I will introduce straight away Ali. Ali, are you there? We haven't been able to hear you.
Yes, I'm here. I was
Wonderful.
just caught in the triple, so no worries. I'm around.
Wonderful. We got to see you very briefly, but we got to see you. And I just wanted to hear what I was going to say about you. Ali is the founder and managing director of IDEMA International Development Partners. And you know what he is currently running today, but he's also the co-founder of this platform that Rory was referring to, the needsmap.coop, but then also of other initiatives like Innogar, the Innovation Garage, and Innogar Art, which is like an incubation center for artistic initiatives. He does hold a PhD from Marmara University on the development agencies in Turkey under the auspices of the EU. So as I was saying, I think that with the two of them, we're going to have very complementary and diverse looks at the phenomenon that we are looking at. So the structure, I know that Rory has said it a little, has sort of run through it, and some of you who have already participated in previous seminars know, but I think it's very neat. We will get first a chance to hear like an overall statement on the topic, on today's topic. And then we'll have an exchange. We've called it an interview, and they have been briefed. They have been briefed about the questions. So we have had a chance to learn and to prepare about this. And then we will go into the breakout room sessions. There will be no recording there, as Rory said, which I think is very important. And then we will come back to the plenary, and then we'll take it from there. We will be reminding a little bit the dynamic as we go. So without further ado, I will give the floor on to Anna. You are welcome to open the floor and the discussion with your statement, which I'm looking forward to hearing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rocio. So as Rocio said, I'm quite involved in the COP movement since over a decade. Over a decade now. Not that I say it always sounds super hopeful, but a little bit over a decade. And So my main focus normally works as a Intasebas, that it's the name of our co-op. That means, and why not, in Basque, because we're placed in the Basque country. So the name itself is a statement for us. We work very intensively on co-ops, right? And we've been very involved in the movement for some time, and even be part of the founding of the Youth Network for Europe under the COPS Europe. So this has been a journey full of adventures, let's put it that way. None of us expected to be part of a co-op that grew from 7 members to 35 workers in 5 countries right now, which is what we do. So we've been involved in quite some challenges involving us also pandemic and for this digitalization of the platform cooperative development and movement and the rise of the new forms of co-ops. We've been as involved as we could because we believe that this is something that the movement itself needs so much. So yeah, for us, I'm going to talk to you from the very humble perspective of someone that is learning about platforms and digital platforms and data platforms every day. I have very, very few answers to a lot of questions. But I will bring my reality from the perspective that I hold, and hopefully we can chit chat later in the breakout room on how we see perspectives. So yeah, for me, of what I've worked through these years as the 4th edition now of the Platform Cooperative Now course runs, is that this is a huge movement in the making. Very few people have answers for a lot of difficult questions. And the beauty of this movement now is that a lot of people are coming together to think. And I think that this is a huge thing for the co-op movement, because for once, or like again, maybe for those more experienced than me, again, we're bringing our heads together to put words and statements in, maybe laws even, to a new reality that we will need to face as a movement. And, this is something that is going to happen regardless of what we think. And so we better put ourselves to work and to actually want to contribute our part, to develop this. And I come to you from a very non-technical perspective. So I understand when people say, well, platform co-ops, I don't know what I'm talking about, neither did I. So bear with me and believe me that I think that there are a lot of people that can contribute to this regardless of your technical knowledge, right? And this is a, it's a work that we all need to do together, because I think it is very important to state that we need to have this discussion, because we need to legitimize this as part of the co-op movement, especially when we look at technology, but also from my perspective, very Basque of me to say that we come from a perspective of worker-owned co-ops, right? In the Basque country, most of the cooperatives are worker-owned. So this raises a lot of doubts on how this is going to impact on the legitimization of worker participation, not only in the management, but also in the results, how this is going to impact the community, which communities is this going to impact when we talk digital, right? And on that perspective as well, and on that line also, how this is going to bring or to break the quality of employment. So I think that these are topics that are being moved and delivered upon. And unless the movement and the people involved in this decide to take part on the generation of the frame that we will play, some people that don't know as much or don't care as much will be the ones legislating our own fields. And for me, this is very interesting, because last week I was in the Harvard session that we had, and we were talking blockchain, and a lot of people were talking about whether blockchain-based technologies are going to be better or worse for cooperative development, and how much, for me, the question for me is like, how much do these values of the decentralized organizations actually follow the cooperative values? Because, there is a very blurry line when we talk about traceability and then ownership. So this is questions that are bringing. So I think, Rocio, when you asked me about making this statement, my idea was to bring more questions than answers and share with you the challenges that from my perspective are major. I think we have also internal challenges in the co-op movement that are looking at the digital platform co-ops, that are whether this is going to be a movement that is interesting for the co-op, the movement from what I know and where I've been involved so far isn't necessarily young, agile, or quick. And there's this saying in Spanish that is, when the river sounds, there's water on it. So when people bring to you the perspective of the cooperative movement is very old, like there's not full reality on it, but there is quite a reality on the fact that it's not necessarily a young and appealing movement yet, because I'm one of those people that thinks that the best times of the co-op movement are yet to come. So I think that we need to realize whether this is going to be something that we want to embark quickly and fast on, or is this the cooperative movement going to be too slow or too steady in some cases to take up on this challenge? And also, how are we going to look at this from the decentralization and the ownership and the participatory perspective of, for my side, obviously the worker owners, right?
Okay, so Anna, we will thank you so much. Actually, yes, you did throw many questions, but I think that by putting the spotlight on the issues that you consider important, actually you are making a statement. So we will definitely come back to how you pose them as questions and what possible answers can come out. Let's pass the floor on to Ali. There you go. Thank you, Anna. Ali, so the floor is yours for your 3 to 5 minute statement, and then we'll move on to the interview.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, apologies. I was caught on the mobile side, but for an introductory remark, I mean, being part of a platform cooperative is being mobile. So now, as we are more interdependent through the COVID and pandemic process, we learned that, I mean, we are more interdependent. So that's why structures like new cooperativism, social cooperativism, platform cooperativism. So we need new models or institutional innovation through the discussion. That's where platform cooperativism stands, I believe. So one point of it is to discuss from my side is the theoretical perspective of it. There's a huge and old tradition of cooperativism around the world. Now we have the technology, but now we have the problems of technologies, which are repercussions coming from neoliberalism, rapid urbanization, and demand for data, misuse of data, huge enrichment of the platforms like Amazon, like Google, or like Airbnb, those kind of things. It's a big play of advertisements, data ownership, and selling these data to a small number of people that enriches themselves and brings new riching. But this is only caused through the data abuse. In that sense, we need to create examples of or good practices of products as successful as platforms. In that sense, we approach platform cooperativism as a research and innovation area that needs to develop crowd-owned products. Even if it's still immature, so we don't have very big cases like we haven't punched Amazon yet, but platform cooperativism is appearing as a movement from its roots and from its solidarity approach. Like fair trade is a nearby ecosystem, the coders, blockchain ecosystem, decentralization approach on blockchain, tokenization is another neighborhood field ecosystem that enriches the platform cooperativism. So in that sense, in the theoretical perspective, what I can say is platform cooperativism is surrounded by the supporting mechanisms, as I said, like blockchain and other things, but it's still in a trial phase, I can say. So, but the trial phase includes the solidarity crowd ownership initiatives that we get to know each other. In that sense, New School, Platform Cooperativism Circle, some examples from like Airbnb from Italy, there is the Garbage Collector Cooperative from Brazil, we in Turkey for humanitarian aid needs map, we did 9.5 million transactions up now, and more than 100,000 members in our system. So these creates good examples. These creates potential for data ownership, for changing ecosystems, and for bringing hope for the new generation to create better examples of these platform cooperatives. In that sense, on one side, we have the theory, we have the dream, we have the potential to make decentralization, cooperativism more digital, more transparent, more accountable, more decentralized, and more owned by the owners or creators or the data owners of the system. Like, let's say we have LinkedIn. We never talk about this, but LinkedIn is also abusing data, and we are paying for this. In that sense, so actually we defend or we advocate that LinkedIn should be paying back us as the owner of the data, as the owner of the CVs or biographies, etc. But we have to create, so this is the second side, not the theoretical side, the practical side is we should be aware, and platform cooperatives are products. So platform cooperatives should also know that we are providing service to the stakeholders, to the owners. So in that sense, we have to be more transparent, we have to be more accountable, and we have to provide an efficient product to the ecosystem. So we should not fail. So market is failing, public sector is failing. So what area we are in should not be failing. So we should be fixing. In that sense, on the practical side and not the theoretical side, so on the practical and product side, platform cooperative is to create good practices, accessible, transparent, and efficient products that is accessible and that fulfills a real need of the market. Okay. That should be fixing the problems, social needs, or whatever the problem they are touching upon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ali. Thank you so much. That was a good, very good departing point for the discussion. I think we have some good bases in the form of statements. Let's, we continue. It's just that we wanted to keep it a little bit, limited in so we can have a good seed, to continue the discussion. So going back to Anna, and maybe we can, continue in this order, but so you have touched upon one of the main challenges that we see, and it's that platform cooperatives actually are run. Seven of the most important ones are run by multinationals, and you have cited, and that's the other thing. When you talk with people, they can cite the name of big multinationals who run on platform cooperatives. On platforms, but they have a hard time naming or identifying cooperatives, platform cooperatives. So Anna was saying, that there's a movement, that there are external and internal challenges. And then Ali was mentioning how, we have a need for both the theoretical and practical, to develop the theoretical and the practical side of this platform cooperative movement. But how do we do it? What concrete alternatives do you think that platform cooperativism can offer as an alternative to these big multinationals? And you have already pointed out at some, but in the end we will be able to gather them. But let's just go very practically, and it will go straight into what Ali was referring to as the practical side, right? But how do we do that, Anna? How do we do that?
This is a tough question, and once again, I don't have answers for you. But one of the main challenges when we talk these kind of platforms is scale, right? And we all wonder what happens when cooperatives scale. And this is not a matter of platform co-ops, it's a matter of co-ops in general. Like, we don't know how to scale, which is a very bold statement, but we have difficulties on scaling, right? There's a lot of countries that each legislation is different. So when we go abroad, suddenly we encounter the facts that what worked in our home country or in our original country is not going to work in another country. And there's even countries that don't have a cooperative legislation, leave alone difficulties. It just doesn't exist, right? So there's a bunch of difficulty that comes from the fact that a lot of co-ops that we mentioned are actually, a lot of platform co-ops that I'm finding out that is very funny for me is they aren't even registered as co-ops because their country doesn't have a cooperative legislation, or it's too difficult to struggle through, so they don't. And they stay as non-co-ops that work as co-ops. But for me, this is a very difficult situation because it becomes a very structural problem. It works now because the people are cooperativists, and this is super aligned with what Arizmendi, the founder of Mondragon, said: is first people, then companies, first cooperativists, and then cooperatives. And right now we have the luck that these people creating co-ops that are not necessarily structurally cooperatives are cooperative members. They feel cooperativists, right? They are educated, they follow the values, they know what they're doing. But unless the structure is set up, how can we assure that these platforms become co-ops when the generation changes? And this is a huge challenge even inside of co-ops that are structurally co-ops. So when you talk about like how people can't point out platform co-ops, they can't point out co-ops. So I think that there's like this difficulty on understanding how good are we at creating businesses, and how good are we at speaking co-ops outside of our co-op network? Because I always say, and I always feel that cooperative members feel very comfortable talking co-ops in co-ops forums. And then they get out and we feel super slow and we are very small and people don't talk about values because, what matters is profit. And if you are the best company in the world, regardless of you being a co-op. So people don't take pride on that. And I think this is it's a what we call push and pull situation, where you need to know when to push the boundaries. But I think, on the other hand, that scale is a huge difficulty. And we were talking about this in the morning. It's like, how do we reach products? And it's what Ali was sharing, products that are super high quality. So the people don't necessarily need to buy based on values. They can buy based in quality. And then these people are going to become participatory in the co-op movement, but they don't compromise the quality of the product that they're using over the values that they want to purchase. So I think this is a challenge for co-ops, but I think the framework itself is super difficult to answer, because unless we have a very good capacity of enacting into, balancing the playing field in terms of also legal and organizational framework, this is going to remain a challenge.
So in that sense, it's also very important, the work that we are doing. And I mean, you see some meetings happening with some international organizations, who are, and who then may have an impact on governments, either state governments or even regional governments. So thanks so much, Anna, for that. Ali, do you want to comment on that, or?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for Anna's contribution. It's really enriching the discussion and also inspiring to boost the issue. So what it reminded me, like standing point from ethical issue, what platform cooperatives do or cannot do. One of them is, I believe, and this also creates the decentralization issue, is decision making. So in terms of strategy, planning, fundraising, pricing, or whatever the service is provided. So who makes the decision? How the decision making is being done, I believe, is one of the critical issue platform cooperatives needs to discuss at the same time, which I believe is the problem that creates the hierarchies in the existing platforms like Facebook or Amazon, whatever. So there's limited shareholders. There are some founders who decide, but what we are discussing is crowd decision making. There are lots of examples on this and trials, or even some coding. So blockchain, technology, all the layers, decision makings, award systems, creating these blocks, I believe is a good example, but it is not prevailed. So it is not in the daily life currently, the ecosystem. So one of the things I believe challenge, but at the same time the development area of platform cooperative is the decision-making process. This is also touching the central and decentralization issue. In terms of the product side and like the cooperative cultures, cooperative side, we are bounded with the legal issues. Like as needs map, we are a cooperative from Turkey, but there are lots of challenges that I open a branch in Brussels or I open a branch in San Francisco or whatever the world is. So one of the things we need is to prevail the cooperative culture, because Mondragon has a huge cooperative culture in the city. So I believe delivering culture of cooperatives through the cities can be another potential area that can be developed. Recently, maybe you have heard, Citycoin was developed as a blockchain in the Bitcoin area. So this Citycoin can become opening an area to integrate people to decision-making processes. And again, recently, just by lottery, Paris, let's say how my pronunciation is crap in French. So Paris established the citizen assembly by lottery. So 100 people are elected by lottery to make decisions on those. So these are showing, indicating the search for new areas for decision making, I believe. So if we can create or discuss new ways of decision making for young people, especially for like children, for other parts of the communities or stakeholders or who are members to the cooperatives, I think this will be critical.
Okay, so just very, since we have to go into the breakout rooms in 3-4 minutes, just very quickly, and you know, and you gave me the perfect segue into the second question. So in your view, how can, very specific, how can cooperatives renegotiate the user rights on existing privately owned platforms? And this has to do with how do we think differently and how do we reach other parts of society, other beneficiaries, other users? How would you tackle that one? And then we'll do a quick, you know, each of you replies, and then we'll move into the breakout rooms sessions.
Do you want me to go first? Oh, Ali, go.
Go, Anna, go.
Ladies first. I love this being educated. Okay. No, I think it's a very good question. I mean, and you know, it's part of my closing statement, but I'll state it right now, and then we can talk about it in the breaking room. So we're cheating the process. I think a lot of it starts on education and the fact that we live in a very capitalistic reality, and that when we talk about incorporating co-ops into curriculums, people go like, "Oh no, I don't want to brainwash students into becoming co-op developers." And it's like, what about brainwashing students into becoming capitalistic? I mean, hello, brainwash. But you know, I think it's a reality that we need to live in, and it needs to be a parallel process on how much we want to invest in the fact that we need to be noisy, because I think that the lack of co-ops or the lack of the creation of co-ops really is based on the fact that very few people know the movement, and not very few because comparing to the world, I mean, not like because we are few, but I think that if it becomes more known and it becomes majorly featured in major media, like it happened with some of the co-ops in the Patagonia or in mainstream places, I think that people will realize how much in line it really is with their values and the values of the SDGs and the values of the new generation. So I think that it's, you know, when it's from the heart, it really works. And I know that it's not from there, but I know that the more we educate people into what really means to be a co-op, rather than the idea that people have about co-ops being more social than not, I think these will change.
Yep. Thank you, Anna. Ali, off to you for 1-2 minute max, and then we need to go into the breakout rooms.
Damn, I should have let him speak first.
You seem to be going through some tunnels.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
So, okay, should we proceed with the breakout rooms, and then we can give him time at the end?
Let me just read what you actually wrote here. So another reason could be that it is generally harder to get people together to start a co-op than a partnership or starting a self-employment.
Yeah, I'm conscious
yeah.
in some countries you need, 10, if not, I think in Croatia you sometimes need 20 people to start a co-op. So that's a real barrier.
That's a barrier, absolutely.
Yeah, and money. And money.
And money. Okay. Yes, there's
Okay.
capital requirements. Okay, just for everybody's benefit, I'll create the breakout rooms. Anna and Ali, you will get an invitation, just decline it, and same with you too, Rocio. So we'll have our own breakout room that's separate from the participants.
Okay.
And I'll put the timer on for 20 minutes. I'll give you a warning sort of 8 minutes before the end. Okay, we'll go in there soon. Okay, thanks folks. Yeah, no. Yeah,
Ali's coming back.
Ali's coming back. Yes.
Yeah, he's there. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought you must have lost a connection.
Yeah, sorry about it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if the people is there, but if you want to, what I normally do when I manage this stuff is either I kick them out, and then if they are there, they will come back, and if not, just put them in the waiting room.
So where do we want to take the conversation? Because we can have our own, we can go deeper into the stuff that you've got. I mean, I think the point that Rocio was asking you is there's obviously a role for co-ops both in establishing platform co-ops, but might also be a role for co-ops in securing rights for the users of the platform. The thing that was going through our head when we did the call for papers is, in the UK, we lost control of the co-op bank.
What I can add is, like, in Turkey, we have a case, like there was the co-op, like shopping, small shopping groceries. We have called one of them established by a municipality. It was a cooperative one called Tansaş. It evolved, but then it lost the control. It got indebted. Then it's lost and it's sold to a big conglomerate. Then it is owned by a person. So this is one of the biggest threats against cooperative. If they are not, like, cooperatives in general have 4 problems, I believe. One of them is governance. One of them is financial transparency. The third one is the membership relations. So if membership relations, the motivation is not done, it is failing. And the fourth one is providing good products. Like if it's a let's say a woman cooperative producing a good let's say handmade products, they should be well designed, they should be well packed, but they should also be integrated into the supply chain mechanism. So we should create also value chains. When we say just platform cooperatives or co-ops, it's okay, but the rivalry, the competition is against a huge monopolies. Like Amazon is creating its own monopoly, Google creating its own monopoly. So as we are fighting against monopolies, we should create our strong blockchain-based or value chain-based supply chains. So which I say it as value chain. So we have to create, and what we believe as through needs met, what we proved is, we, for instance, made this 4 thing in our cooperative because aid coordination in Turkey is quite political, by political parties. It is very, like, also religious issues and other thing. And also it is lots of it creates lots of problems of transparency. So what we did is we created a transparent mechanism. We don't accept money. We never accept money. But what we do is we bridge people peer-to-peer with a transparent system that people know that the direct peer-to-peer aid they are providing is reaching out to the beneficiary. So that's what we changed in the aid industry in Turkey. So we created our own value chain.
It's almost like Kiva without the intermediary of the platform, isn't it? You're putting people directly in touch with each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, back to the point I was making is that you can create competitor co-ops to people like Amazon and Uber, but you could also create effectively cooperative unions to lobby for user rights within the corporate co-ops. So when we lost control of the co-op bank, the customers, about 3,000 of them, created a customer union, which is a co-op. In order to secure the commitment of the bank to its ethical policy, and it's managed to do that. It's managed to become officially recognized as the as the customer arm of the bank, if you like. I mean, it's by no means a perfect solution, and I think all of the members of that co-op would prefer it to go back into mutual ownership. But it is another strategy that the co-op movement could deploy.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to back that up, Rory, I think that this idea of having the users coalesce, into a social, organized social movement, it would be, that takes the form of either a cooperative or an association. I mean, I'm thinking about the same thing with SMART, the artists, the creative people and the artists across Europe. Actually, what they're also doing is that they're teaming up very, very, very strongly and actively with Culture Action Europe, which is really like a lobby for rights, for workers' rights, but also for accessibility into the arts, etc., etc. And they're sort of doing awareness raising. They're forming, training people within the organization, but also representatives of the administration. So I think that, as you say, I mean, I think that ensuring that the rights and the values, and Anna said that before, to ensure that in that decentralization, there's the values, the cooperative's values are guiding that move. It could be a huge role, and it's one that cooperatives could take on, and you just gave a very good example. I think that what Ali said as well, and the example of SMART, I think it could also work.
Yeah. What is it? So SMART is like a hybrid union marketing co-op.
SMART is, yes. Yeah. But just also thinking about what Anna said, I mean, scaling, but the thing with scaling is that we also we always almost go into this idea of scaling up, and we know that cooperatives are more about scaling out, right? Horizontally. But then even the how we do it, and then also there's a sentence that Ali said, opening up a branch, right? Well, actually, what we see in the study, that I did was the different models of scaling up actually have different repercussions, right? So of course, it can be faster and straight to the point and everything if you branch out and you have everything under control. But then the governance, the transparency, the membership involvement would be much lower, because you need to build the belonging, right? Whereas if you give the power, and that's the key question that I think that Ali was also discussing, the power, the decision making, if you give it off since the beginning and you let those people build their own branch, well, you get some other things that you wouldn't have if you had branched out. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, just stop in there.
Sorry, Anna.
Yeah, so I had this discussion the other day, and for me it's just very interesting, because I really believe in decentralization and the understanding of, like, especially after what we've lived in Facilitator, that it's like, how do you take a cooperative that it isn't as big, but it's multi-located worldwide, and suddenly it just becomes a much more spread, and it makes no sense to actually keep it centralized so much, so decentralization is super good. But then there's the other part, it's traceability. And for me, it looks like blockchain is this huge technology that can actually allow a lot of that to happen. But the other part that I always wonder is, how much of that traceability can lead to the fact that it becomes difficult to personalize the ownership. Decentralization is great, but are there people behind those machines in a way? Or how much of that consciousness comes back to the owners, and how much do we know, and how do we know that those owners are people, and how much capacity do we have to have that idea of one member, one vote? And then there's the other part. It's like, if we talk about multi-stakeholders, how much is it on the owners and how much on the users, or how much on the workers and how much on the users if everyone's an owner? It's a fight even inside my head when we talk about digitalization and decentralization, because for me, the beauty of the platform co-op and the digitalization movement is the fact that no longer you need to have physical connection to actually belong to something that is the same. And no longer do you need to invest in having everyone together in order to take decisions, because there's technology now that allows traceability and allows people to make sure that those votes or that governance models to actually be kept in place. But, you know, my other part goes to like how much of the values of co-ops belong to some rooted community. And if we unroot those, if we actually take it over to a, you know, digital form, where is your community, right? Which community do you give back to? Or, you know, for me, it's very fun because I'm a huge defender of the fact that there is some platform co-ops which members will never physically meet, and that it's okay. But it's like, how do we make sure that equality is set up on those people, taking into account that they belong to very different universes worldwide in terms of wealth? So how do you combine that? And then how does the co-op that is digital make sure that there's that give back to the community of each member and not only of few? So, you know, I think there is so much to understand, because I belong to the ICA Youth Committee, and we have assemblies that are digital and you can vote. But this is unheard of in other co-ops, even in the ICA. Like, you don't vote at the digital level. You need to get together to vote, which in this age makes zero sense, at least for me.
Yes.
And also, I think it's a threat to, you know, to actually participation, because there's going to be people that can't be there. And then what? You know, for once we have this huge technology that is going to allow participation to become mayor, but how do we ensure that it's rooted back? You know, this is maybe I said too much, but for me, this is huge.
Do you want to say anything, Ali? Because I've got a question for both of you related to what Anna was saying about the different interests. Quite a lot of the work I've done over the last 6-7 years is on something called the FairShares model, which is a multi-stakeholder co-op model, where you cap the voting power of each stakeholder group, but each person has one vote within the stakeholder groups they belong to. And I just wondered if there is, I mean, quite a few of the early projects that we supported were platform co-ops, and I wondered if you think that there is a natural affinity between a solidarity co-op model and platform cooperativism, where the platforms naturally gravitate towards a multi-stakeholder governance model. I don't know if you, are you still with us, Ali?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I was just thinking. Yeah, with solidarity platform cooperatives and platform cooperatives is more or less, I believe, similar. But in the platform cooperative area, we see a lot of technology people also. So they are coming from coding background, technology background, and like some of them are also a big advocate of, let's say, worker cooperative. At the same time, like in UK, one of the good examples is Outlandish technology cooperative. They are like good example of solidarity cooperative, but at the same time, through their projects, products, they accelerate platforms. They try to, you know, empower platform cooperativism. And the second one is also data cooperatives. So the data processing, data ownership, data related issues are also another challenge of this area, because once you have members, for instance, in NeedMap case, we have members, but at the same time we have users. So there's also this dilemma, especially for platform cooperatives, how you will create decision-making layers, because users are your natural members or not. This is also another challenge I can also share with the team here. Maybe we can discuss. I don't have solution, but this is also another challenge. So user of the platform is a member or not. So that's also another, because like ownership, you know, boundaries you create with the area is also another challenging issue. I don't know if I express myself truly.
Yeah, no, and it's a debate that I think persists, you know, because and this is one of the biggest debates for me, because when people, for example, talk data co-ops, they assume that they are going to be user co-ops, right? So consumers, like the very same model as credit co-ops or consumer co-ops. And for me, this is a huge challenge, because I come from a very worker-owned perspective. So, and even our worker co-ops and our consumer co-ops and our bank are multi-stakeholder.
Yeah.
So for us, even at the legal level here in the Basque Country, we're trying to process on how this can affect that at the Spanish level as well. Is can we assure that there is some legal frame that, maybe not makes platform co-ops to become worker-owned, but at least fosters or ensures that there is a reflection of like platform co-ops should or could easily become worker co-ops, or at least multi-stakeholder. And I think this is going to be, and I think this is going to be a huge debate, because I think the easy way is not.
The easy way is not to go multi-stakeholder.
Yeah, I think it's easier, it's more natural maybe for people to think about consumer co-ops when they think at least, for example, data co-ops. And my question always is, for example, if we take the writers example, right? We have a couple of worker-owned writer co-ops now, but if you think about it, are we going to allow, for instance, a model where the co-op is established by the restaurants and the workers are just hired and the writers aren't members? Is this something that we want to allow or not?
I think it's breach of principle 1 myself.
So do I.
Yes.
So do
yeah,
I.
but is it really,
For me, it is. That's what I've argued. I've argued in our journal that when you resist a multi-stakeholder model for somebody who actually depends on a co-op for their livelihood or for their services.
But that's every co-op.
It's active exclusion. Well, it is at the moment, which is the argument for a more open cooperativism, which to me, platform cooperativism is giving an extra boost to the arguments for multi-stakeholder governance and multi-stakeholder participation. And it's the nature of the platform that we both produce and use concurrently.
Yeah, and this is a huge argument that we have when people come to Mondragon.
Yes.
In visits, and people say, like, I'm a member of a credit co-op. It's like, oh, are you a worker owner or do you own? And no, I'm just a worker. I'm like, what's the difference between being a worker in a bank and in a cooperative bank for you? Like, it's the same, no? No, but my company is more ethical. I'm like, cheating the system. I always tell them, no, you're cheating.
When I came to Mondragon, they said that there was a period where they took the workers off the governing body, but then they had readmitted them because they had a different perspective on long-term development, which was valuable.
In which co-op?
In the you call it Laboral.
The bank.
The Cucha. It used to be called the Laboral Populaire, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, Laboral Cucha is actually, I mean, that surprises me because they were just worker co-op until they merged with Ibarcucha. Right. But okay. I don't have a trace of memory where they haven't.
This was quite a long time ago. It was 2003 when I was having the conversation where they talked about the different perspective of the customer members as opposed to the worker members, and actually they needed each other.
Yeah. I mean, they've been always worker owned and company owned, but they didn't used to have customers, and then they introduced the customers as part of it because they merged with another bank.
Okay.
That was only customer owned, right? It was a normal credit co-op, and then they had this huge, and this is maybe it comes perfect with the debate because they merged with someone that was opposite to what co-op system they used, and then they needed to retrain the workers because they were like, okay, you're going to be members. So now you need to be cooperativized in a way because you need to come here. And now we have member customers that we've never had. And then the customers of Laboral Cucha said, well, if they are members, I want to be a member as well. Yeah. My bank is the main bank. Why am I not a member? And then they needed to make this huge policy change inside the bank. But it was the other way around. It was they added customers as part of the membership, which is still an internal debate today.
Yes, that's interesting. We've only got about a minute before I readmit the other people to report back on what they've been talking about. Is there anything else? We've covered quite a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, these conversations.
I could go on and on and on.
All the three of us are 100% convinced that this model it's superb, right? And then when can we find spaces like this one that can show people that, you know, the cooperative model actually answers to very modern questions and challenges. Yeah. And I think I work with my dad a lot in the retired the Association of Friends of Arizmendiarrieta, that technically is not retired people, but practically it is retired people. Yeah. And now they're teaching at universities, maybe 40 workshops a year with students from all the universities in the Basque Country and Navarra. And I think this is fantastic because for once, you know, they're showing examples of governance models that are a little different.
So they'll be coming back in. So Rocio, I can tell you who's in each group, and then it's up to you to try and eke out of that group what they've been talking about.
Okay.
See if we can get the same level of conversation going with each group for at least 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, and how many groups do we have?
There's 3, I think, because there was only a couple in 4, so I moved them into the other rooms. So
wonderful.
Do you want to make a note of the names of?
Yeah, I have them. So I'm writing.
So you've got them. Good. Yeah. Okay.
Right. No, I don't have them. I was writing.
All right. So in room 1, it's Akash, Amanda, Mary, and Mojabeng.
Okay.
In room 2, it's Catalina, Gillian, Jodine, and Martin. And in room 3, it's Darren, Dylan, Grant, and Roger, because I don't think Tabibu made it into the room.
Grant and Roger. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So, back to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Are you back? Are you all back? Let me see the little faces. Let me change the view. Yeah, everyone is back here. Wonderful. Okay, so I hope you had a lively conversation. We surely did in the main room. So the moment it's now to go on to each of the groups and see, you know, that you can share with us the comments, the thoughts, the reflections that you have put together, so we can, you know, socialize that thinking and put it all together. And this is back to being recorded. So remember, if you don't want to be recorded, you need to turn your camera and micro off. Okay. Okay. So group number 1, I have I have written down that I have Akash, Mary, Mo. I'm seeing. There you go, Mojabeng, right? And I think there was someone else. Who?
Amanda.
There you go. Amanda. Okay, there you go. And Amanda. Wonderful. So who wants to go first?
I can just briefly share. We discussed that in different contexts, the South African context and the Indian context. And in South Africa, what we agree and have observed, myself and Amanda coincidentally are from South Africa. It tends to be older people who form cooperatives. And what we've observed is that they tend to lack resources and skills, particularly business management skills. And I've had the privilege of working with them, so has Amanda actually. And what I noticed was that programs that were offered to upskill them, they were not uptaking the knowledge as quickly as young persons would be able to. And it was also quite overwhelming for them. So it used to be difficult and challenging for me personally to work with them from a business development point of view. And then when we look at youthful groups, you find that those with skills would rather get a form of income from a job, for example, rather than struggle to put the group together. And in cases where I've got that experience where we have tried to form things together and build different co-ops, and things just didn't work out. people had many other commitments and yeah, trust issues as well emerged, and the thing would just dissolve. Amanda actually was able to put a stat to it. Apparently, 84% of cooperatives in South Africa actually fail. So yeah, basically that's what we put together, and also that the motive is usually the government funding, because government does provide funding. So it does appear sometimes like the cooperatives are formed as a way to just get access to that money because people know they won't qualify for it as individuals.
Uh-huh. Okay. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The last thing is a question I'm personally left with is, what opportunity is there for young people? What will it take for young people to form cooperatives to solve prevailing problems that they themselves would want resolved?
And particularly just to just to reconnect it, I think that those are wonderful reflections, and actually we have been talking with Anna about how to engage older people also in new ways of cooperativism. But are there any platform co-ops being formed in South Africa and India that you can point us at?
I actually do know of one. It's called Cattle. Sure, Cattle.
Maybe Amanda can also pitch in. Or Anna, you were nodding.
Yeah, I know of a few, but I don't remember the names, but Trevor always mentioned that especially in the south of India, in Kerala, they are quite progressive in their legislation. So they are fostering a lot on the creation of new co-ops. And overall, the legal framework for co-op development is very, very strong. And in South Africa, I think there is a taxi and drivers co-op that I know of, that it's South Africa Taxi. Very, very creative, I know.
Okay.
South Africa Taxi, so that's for sure. But I think there are a couple more, but that's the one that I'm sure about.
Okay, so let's move. Thank you so much. Group number 2. And I have written down Catalina, Jodine, Martin, and is there a fourth person that I missed, Rory? Martin and Gillian. Okay, wonderful. So we're all ears.
I mean, if I can say 2 sentences and then I leave for other members of the group. I think what we were talking about, that a big shift as this is as the cooperative platforms, a big shift will need for sure, a collective mind shift, first of all. We are talking about, changing from a traditional business model based on transaction, let's see, thinking processes, to an ecosystem thinking model. So it's in which I would say, as according to what we were saying, the importance that all economic actors, have the same rights, the duties and responsibilities, and within that, the aspect of the ethical stance and how we build trust among all these ecosystem actors, which is more complex as more people are involved in. Then I think something very good news of this is that in terms of, if we talk about COPs in Europe, especially in Western Europe, is about the opportunity for cooperatives to regenerate. So younger people coming in because of the digital aspect of the COPs platforms. That's all for me. I don't know, please, if my other peers would like to add anything else.
I think for me, certainly, Catalina really hit the nail on the head when she introduced this idea of an ecosystem framework as opposed to the business model approach. That for me was kind of like real light bulb going off in a sense. I guess one of the other issues that came up, which again the platform co-op model facilitates, is transparency. That you need transparency in order to build trust, and the platform co-op model offers that opportunity that every member can, through blockchain and other things, can see what is happening. There's no way of hiding things that certainly in the old cooperative models increasingly there was. So that, and I suppose the other thing that again we came back to, which is nothing new, is it's all about education at the end of the day.
So Jodine or Gillian, do you want to add anything else?
I think the only thing I would add to that, because that covers it pretty well, but the only other aspect is the need for all sectors of the cooperative movement to work together and to understand each other, which comes back to education as well, within the movement as well as outside, because you need the whole world to understand what co-ops are, but you also need co-operators to know what other bits of the cooperative movement are, and they don't always. And that potential for cooperatives to work together and collaborate is incredible, and doesn't happen nearly often enough, I would say.
I saw many of us nodding. Okay, so on to group 3. If you can maybe share with us, I have Darren, Dylan, Grant, and Roger. So if you can share with us your thoughts.
Darren, you want to start, Darren?
Say again, Roger?
Do you want to start and then I'll kind of follow up with?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, just clarify that Grant and Dylan had technical issues and or didn't join the group side of it. So most of the discussion was between Roger and I.
Okay.
And it pretty much, I'll just tap into what Catalina said and Martin, that really we were, on the one hand, we were kind of distinguishing between supply side and demand side sides of the discussion. And Roger made the point about the need for clarity about whether you're trying to address cooperative issues from a user perspective or from a worker or producer perspective, will help the development of a platform moving forward, and that makes perfect sense to me. So, for example, just saying what the boundaries are. If you're going to set up a co-op, what would the boundary would be for the system? So you don't need to fix all of the problems. And I made the point that one of my I work with some colleagues at the University of Brighton who are much more experts at innovation than I am, and they would give me a ticking off for some of the comments we often make about innovation. We think we're talking about innovation, but we're not. And my argument would be lots of the issues we can help for the movement going forward don't have to be innovative. Some of them are actually quite straightforward, and we can just learn, for example, the lessons of capitalist modules that don't work, and tap into those. So whether it's transparency that Martin mentioned, whether that's the nature of the system, whether it's open, whether it's closed, whether the producers can take users with us, all those kind of issues, that some of them are actually just tweaks that the cooperative movement can actually take advantage of, rather than being blockchain issues, cryptocurrencies, crowdfunding, those kind of things. So that's one of the things, some of the things we were talking about. And I guess I just wanted to pick up on timing what Anna was saying about the seeing as a bit of an older age population of cooperators, should we say. I think there is a marketing issue for the movement, and sometimes the answers are almost as if you, in a commercial sense, you would rebrand the cooperative movement, which we're not about to do, but it's almost to say, just do this, and then out at the other side will be cooperative practice, as opposed to putting it in front of people. I certainly know from colleagues I work with, commercial people, that they, for that reason, they probably wouldn't get involved in cooperatives. But I think if they almost seen some of those excellent examples that we mentioned, then they might think otherwise. So I think that's one side of it. But I'm going to stop now and see, Roger, if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, I thought we had, even though there's only two of us, we had a good discussion. Darren's research is trying to learn what can be learned from the private sector of platform cooperatives, which I think is quite interesting. We raised that entrepreneurship issue. I think was one that's been mentioned, and how the image may be a barrier towards the supply of entrepreneurs. But Darren mentioned that the idea of having incubators, and maybe university-based incubators, as being important. I, right at the death of the discussion, wondered whether the phone co-op model, where I think it's West Midlands has taken over the phone co-op, might be a way in which entrepreneurship could be either initiated or sustained. We also mentioned the idea of scaling, and whether, for example, scaling is done differently in the co-op world. I mentioned Airbnb, which is, I think, looking at scaling in a more conventional sense, but there is I think outside Marseille, there's a sort of tourism platform co-op, which is very much about building local tourism and sort of close links with the community. And so that led to us thinking that maybe, the model is one where you have a model which is, of the coding, which can be transferred to different locations. So you can have a sort of the global local model where there's a kind of investment in a good coding system, which can then be used at the local level by communities there. Was there anything else? Yeah, Darren also mentioned that you can kind of, if you are innovative and you have a high quality product or service, then it doesn't need to be that large. You can, if you're a top service provider, then you will do okay. And finally, the issue about whether, when we talk about platform co-ops, is we need to disaggregate to a certain extent. So, the issues about some of the platform cooperatives are about transparency and data rights. But those would be quite different for, say, a taxi cooperative, I would have thought. So, that I think maybe some thinking needs to go into what it is that is the area where the user or the producer would prefer to join a cooperative rather than not.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
okay.
That's...
Thank you, Roger and Darren. Thank you so much. And I see that Rory and Anna have their hands raised. So, Rory.
Sorry, quite a few people have mentioned blockchain as a technology. My daughter's taken an interest in cryptocurrency, so I am at the moment as well. And I noticed that quite a few cryptocurrencies use their currencies as a governance tool, not just as a financial instrument, but as a way of admitting people to governance, particularly in the games world. When people purchase their right to play an online game through a cryptocurrency, it gives them their governance rights as well. I'm just wondering what role cryptocurrencies might have, or blockchain might have, for those of you who are aware. There may be nobody here with knowledge to answer, but is there anybody here with the knowledge to say whether blockchain cryptocurrencies have a role in transforming governance in a cooperative direction? Doesn't seem to be.
Nope.
It doesn't look like we get an answer to that. Okay,
we had some conversations in the course last week because on the Harvard research sprint that I'm doing. And this goes very focused on the decentralized autonomous organizations, the DAOs, or whatever, however you say it in English. In Spanish we say DAO. But you know, the problem there is that it's not necessarily linked to cooperative values. Mm-hmm. So the line between decentralized autonomous organizations and cooperatives is very thin in terms of governance, but quite thick in terms of values. Okay. So, you know, that there is a confusion there, or the potential confusion of just because the technology answers the needs of decentralization doesn't necessarily stand for the values of governance. And I think this is the huge debate, that it's, yes, it enables decentralized organizations and more autonomy, but it doesn't necessarily preserve the values. I don't know if that answers, but that's all the answer I have for you. And I wanted to, just because I started speaking, I wanted to share a little bit of what Roger said, that they talked in your group about the creation of shared code. And I'm not sure how many of you know about CoopCycle. CoopCycle is it's a co-op that stands behind most of the code that serves the riders co-ops that are emerging Europe-wide and now worldwide. And they are two people that developed code, and they let cooperatives, worker-owned co-ops of riders, use the code, and it's just shared code. So they give support to at least, I think it's almost 100 organizations Europe-wide. So there is two French men, young men. I was going to say handsome men, but not necessarily taste for everything. But they are young, and they are giving support to well over 85 organizations that it was back in the day when we had a meeting in September. That's what we were supporting. So what they allowed is they created a code that gives support to create a platform for writers that don't necessarily have the capacity of investing in coders. And what they created is a very cool community of writer co-ops that actually works under the same code or below the same code or works atop of it. So this is an example of how cooperatives of code actually could work for different fields of work. And I know for a fact, because we have a very strong writers co-op here in the Basque Country, that it's actually supporting a change towards Spanish for the onboarding on CoopCycle. So they are also giving support in various languages. So this is an example of people that are very slow companies, but actually giving support to a large amount of network. And it's almost like a community, because they are all working together in the improvement of the layout for user experience. So they improve the user experience. And it's not like EVA, for instance, that is the drivers co-op in Canada that works in blockchain, but they are not so super friendly for users yet.
You know, just very quickly, I won't raise my hand since I will need to give the floor to myself. But Anna, just playing the devil's advocate, I'm very familiar with that CoopCycle, because there's also a La Pájara, you know, that riders cooperative here in Madrid, and you know, I've been working with them. But one thing that I think it's very important to remember is that there was a huge social movement attached to riders. And I think, you know, and at least, I mean, huge, let's huge, not in terms of numbers, but definitely in terms of how assertive they were, how well structured they were, and how much noise they made. So I'm also trying to think from a research perspective, what is the influence? I mean, how much do social movements maybe play a watchdog role into the turning of solutions or the offering of solutions through platform cooperatives, you know, and to ensure that those cooperative values that you were talking about are in place? You know, maybe in some areas where there's not such a social movement or lobbying action, you know, a citizens action, I'm thinking about the energy area as well. You know, I mean, those areas are highly, they have been fueled by social movements, and maybe that's a factor that we should take into account whenever we think about, as Roger was saying, disaggregating them.
I think that one of the key things also for the movement for writers is that they unionized. It looks very stupid, but they created a union, and when you talk to the writers themselves, they all come from the perspective of having been a writer at some point. For in this case, I think it was Mensakas, the main supporter, and the COP cycle supporter of Barcelona, and they created Writers for Rights. And when you listen to them, they are incredibly knowledgeable of their legal framework. So these are people that don't necessarily only work as writers. They actually, they speak the language of law as well. And for me, that was the most incredible part of this, is that they are not only writers, which is super, they are super involved and super committed to the cause. And this takes me again to what Arizmendiarreta used to say, first cooperativists, then cooperatives. Because unless and it takes you back again to that education part, that it's before we create co-ops, we are going to create cooperatives. Because unless there's people that are able to commit the lifetime work of their companies to actually support those labor rights movements, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And transition is going to start, and the values are going to be lost. And we've seen things in co-ops. We've seen it before. Big towers have fallen for both sides, but also for co-ops. Look at Favor. So I think that it is important to understand that when you're a member of a co-op, you're not just a worker. You are the owner of a business. And sometimes as co-op members, even it happens in my co-op, people feel uncomfortable with the description of, you're a businesswoman, you're a businessman. You are. Like, I'm so sorry, you're not just a worker, you are a worker owner. And this means that you need to be, committed to not only the part of the work that you are developing your company, but you are going to take that commitment home. And you are going to be an example for those people in your co-op that come in later and will become worker owners later. So I think that from our perspective, it's very important how much pressure, or how much, energy and time commitment you put in educating not only the people around us, but actually people inside of the co-ops, because those people are business people. They're not just workers, they're business people. So we better, take that put that very big into our heads, because I think that is what makes the worker-owned movement so strong, is that everyone is a business person in the company.
Okay. So I was supposed to ask you for a closing statement, but I thought that you just delivered it.
Maybe that was it.
It comes natural to me,
I was, we have 4 minutes left. I don't know if anyone wants to have, just some final thoughts or words, that just came. Maybe Mary, there you go. Oh, she's clapping. She's not raising hands. She's just clapping. Anyone else? I think that we had some wonderful, even, nicely short and straight to the point thoughts, some takeaway points. I certainly do have a few of them. I wanted to thank Anna as well as Ali for being, yeah, thank you so much. To all of you as well for sharing, for coming today and really sharing your time and your thoughts and your experience. This is also such a wonderful experience to be able to launch these, proposals out to the world and to see them working. So thanks so much again to Mary and Rory. And on we go. We have a half an hour break, but then at 5 we will have...
So those of you who've been to the previous ones, we're not running this back to back, because our second, the facilitator for the second session is Nathan Schneider, and it's very early in the morning. He's got to take his kids to school, but he should be back here by 4 o'clock our time, so 5 o'clock European time. And I'm guessing we've got people from further afield again today. So we could wind up here. If I stop the recording now.